Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. For the record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record, where I'm your host, Orit Connor. Today is Friday, the 24th, is it? 25th. One day behind. I'll certainly get left behind if I keep it at that pace. So the 25th of September 2015, a beautiful day in the Cayman Islands again. I want to welcome you to For the Record, a show that is produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I've been fortunate to be chosen as your host, and you, our listening audience, the owners of Radio Cayman, are welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. on For the Record. You're also welcome to engage in the conversation by calling us on our toll-free number, provided courtesy of Lime. That number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. And of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, then you can email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. And of course, For the Record would not be possible without the proud support of our sponsors. And For the Record is brought to you by Sagicor, where you get wise financial thinking for life. Also, Digicel Top Up, where you can send minutes home to loved ones in Jamaica and stay connected. Today, we're happy to have in the studio with us to discuss e-government initiative in the Cayman Islands. We have Mr. Ian Tibbetts, who is the Director of e-government for the Cayman Islands. We also have with us Mr. Sim Sikut. Did I pronounce that right, sir? Mr. Sim Sikut, who is the ICT Policy Advisor to the Prime Minister and the government of Estonia. And we also will have in the studio with us later on Mr. Alva Suku, the MLA who represents the District of Bodentown in our Legislative Assembly, and who is also the councillor and is responsible for government's the Cayman Islands government's e-government initiative as well. So without any further ado, I want to say first welcome to Mr. Tibbetts. Welcome back to For the Record. And Mr. Sikut, a long way from home, all the way from Estonia. And I'll, just a little nostalgia here. In the Cayman Islands, one of our rites of passage was that you went to sea. As a seaman in the old days, men went on schooners, and they did a lot of turtling and stuff. And then in the 40s, I would imagine probably in the 40s, 50s onward, then we had national bulk carriers. And I was on a ship, on an oil tanker called the Frisia. And the captain of that vessel, that oil tanker, was an Estonian.
Oh, wow.
So, gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, and thank you. Thanks for having us, OC. And so basically this week, we've had a team from Estonia down talking to us about their experiences with e-government. And particularly it was, the team was organized through the e-governance academy in Estonia.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a non-profit, non-governmental group that was set up by the Estonian government because they due to their advances in e-government, they were being approached so frequently by other countries for advice and information, what their experiences, that they encouraged the creation of this e-governance academy. And many people will kind of ask, well, why Estonia? It's a bit far away from us, isn't it? But the truth is, Estonia is a world leader in e-governance, and they've come that they've achieved that position in say 20 to 25 years. But also, while at 1.3 million, we couldn't really call them small considering our population,
right? Certainly.
However, in the grand scheme of things, in the environment of leading of countries that are at the top of the chain and e-governance, that's pretty small. And in the neighborhood, in their neighborhood, I think 1.3 million is a bit small as well, right?
Quite so.
But there were a number of things that attracted us to the Estonia model. One of which was they approached this, with ensuring that they had a very economical approach from the get-go. And obviously, we'd like to benefit from being financially prudent with our approach as well. And they built their approach, I think, would allow us to take advantage of what we already have versus having to more to start over. So we found a lot of correlations there. But the e-governance academy in particular brings not just that knowledge that they have acquired internally, but they have access to top experts in this, certainly from within Estonia. And with us this week, we've had two classic examples of that. Well, all four of them are actually really examples. But, we have with us today Mr. Sept, who is the policy advisor, ICT policy advisor to the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister and the government of Estonia. And we also had with us a lady by the name of Mari Pidak, and she was a civil servant for 22 years. And she led the introduction of the policies around the digital identity and the launch of their digital ID card. So that's just two examples, and then we had also the head of training for the Estonian E-Governance Academy, Anela Kirat, and we had a gentleman by the name of Margus Furthenthal, who is the lead architect and from a company called Cybernetica that developed a core component of their solution, being the X-Road. So, it just shows the level, the expertise that were able to bring and share with us. And our objective, obviously, was to hear from the experience, e-governance leaders, what best practice looks like and feels like. And to understand the model that they've applied, the lessons that they've learned, and particularly in regards to what are the critical success factors that they found to a timely implementation of their e-governance model. We really wanted to learn about the partnership that they established with the private sector, because that was one of the things that was quite different in how Estonia did it. They started off from the get-go with a partnership between the public and private sector. So much so that some of the core infrastructure was provided through a entity that was formed between two of the top banks and two of the top telcos. And then really understanding their ICT policies that support their e-governance, and all of this was really to inform our strategy, help us, just to be informed as we go through the process of creating our own strategy. So. Let me stop talking a bit and give you a chance to yourself and Mr. Sept chance to talk, but it's kind of just setting the stage for where we are.
Certainly. And Mr. Sept, the two things that I'd like you to highlight for our listening audience. One is the historical perspective with Estonia and coming, because Estonia gained its independence from the USSR, I believe, right? And moving from a state-controlled economy towards a more private economy. That I think is very essential. And the other part that I'd like you to explain, because I did some research on this, and what was amazing to me was the fact that Estonia was able to develop an e-government system without using systems that were already in place. So all they needed to do was to become interconnected. They had to interface with the system that the government had, so that you didn't have to recreate the wheel with everything. Those two issues, including what you want to talk about as well, Mrs. Saku.
Sure, and I think you've done already good research on that sense.
Thank you.
Pointing out some of the things I would otherwise have covered. But just as you asked about sort of the context, then yes, I mean, we have been independent again. We used to be independent once between the world wars back in the day, but we've been independent again since '91, and so there's been 25 years almost of quite a ride.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of a lot of reforms were happening at once back in the day. So of course, yes, we went through quite a bit of big bang approach to market liberalization and sort of changing of the whole monetary structure of the country and all the social reforms and all that. But out of that also another big part was administrative reform, and that exactly leads me to the digital government and sort of e-government building. So administrative reform, that aspect was that we quickly figured out we need to be very efficient in how we do things. The reason was that first of all we're a very small country. Well, okay, saying that in Cayman Islands may sound weird, but still, I mean, in a sort of world scale, we're a very small country, and the policy was we don't want to tax people and companies too high enough. So basically, on that note, and you still want a big country, and especially in a tough neighborhood that we are at, you have the full security, national security, and everything. Mm-hmm. So how do you pull that off? And our sort of thinking was that okay, so we have to be really efficient how we do things, and same time we were quite a poor country, so let's say financially or well-being wise. So another aspect was, okay, we have to be efficient, but we also want to make the best to help the economy to grow. So really sort of lay the basis with services and so the environment that the economy would and the well-being of people would rise as fast as possible. So out of all this context, we actually turned to trying out things digitally. And because mind you, in the 90s, I mean, this is when internet is just taking off. Mm-hmm. Personal computers are just entering our everyday lives and stuff like that. So it definitely was a bit of risk and gamble and sort of visionary thinking on the leaders at that time, both in administration and industry and politically as well. They're saying, look, could internet, could IT, digital technologies, could that be a solution, right? So that's why we started trying from, let's say, 99 onwards, quite a few different things of, we tried out that digital identity that we now have. Every Estonian has an identity card that carries the chip that allows me to access anything online, for example. Back in the day, it was just an experiment saying, could that work? As it worked, we scaled that. Yes, we laid the basis, your second question, we laid the basis for integrating whatever platforms or systems that the government is using in order to have seamless services for people and entrepreneurs. Again, initially that was just an experiment, in a way, saying, look, we need to somehow take the costs down, we need to figure out how to really sort of develop fast whatever services we want. So let's see if a joint platform would work. As it happened, again, we scaled that. So a lot of it was exactly initially like forward thinking and experimenting a bit, trying out this new technology as it was emerging, and out of that it became a very sort of conscious strategy from there on, because we saw really early the fruits of what it could bring, and we've been building on top of that ever since.
Okay, some of the main points and the strong points of your system: decentralization, interconnectivity that we talked about before, open platform, and open-ended process. Can you again, for the benefit of our listening audience, expand on those for us, explain them?
Sure. So decentralization, I mean, I would put it another way around. We in Estonia, we like to say it this way, that each minister is a digital minister. Mm-hmm. So basically what it means is that everyone has to be in charge of digital development in their field. Okay. if it's Minister of Health in our case, and they have to make sure that IT is used the best in health services, in hospitals, and so forth. If it's Minister of Education, it's his or her job to make sure that people have the skills to use technology, as well as that e-learning and opportunities of IT in learning are used the most. So that's what decentralization comes from. Is that so ultimately everyone's in charge of their stuff, but you still need to have everybody on the same page technologically. So using common platforms and same standards and high enough security level and so forth, but at the same time also strategically, exactly moving in the same direction. So that's why, besides decentralization, we have also try to figure out a lot how to stay on the same page. That's why, just like in Ian's role here, that's exactly what I do, for example, in my government, to make sure that we look in the same direction, so that we implement key initiatives on a whole of government level and so forth. But at the same time, at the end of the day, everybody has to deliver in their field as well. And so another aspect of that is that so a key thing we work on is capacity building and raising of the skills of officials and IT professionals in all those different departments. Because again, otherwise, if some part of government is not doing as good of a job, then people in the public will not be happy with the whole of government. So like the whole level needs to rise in a way.
Mm-hmm. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I am your host, Dorit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we have the Director of E-Government for the Cayman Islands, Mr. Ian Tibbets, and we have the pleasure of having with us in the studio Mr. Sim Sakut, who is the ICT Policy Advisor to the Prime Minister and the Government of Estonia. Please stay tuned. We have lots to talk about. When we come back, we want to talk about data protection, the concerns that we have here in the Cayman Islands, and how the Estonian government has been able to withstand that challenge as well. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record, where we're discussing in the studio the Cayman Islands e-government initiative, and we also have the pleasure of having a representative from the government of Estonia, a person who advises the government of Estonia on ICT policy. Here in the studio with us, we also now have the pleasure of MLA and Councillor Mr. Alva Suku with us as well. I promised you that we would talk about data protection, which is a huge issue throughout the world. In the Cayman Islands as well, we see concerns about data protection, and we have an initiative going forward now where we're crafting data protection legislation as well. How was that issue tackled in Estonia?
That was actually one of the first things we did from a legal framework point of view, because you need to have the right sort of legal framework to technologically move forward. And the reason why it was one of the first things that, obviously, just like the concern is here or elsewhere, people, if they trust the data with government, or actually for that matter, even for the private sector, because the regime we're talking about doesn't just concern the public sector. So if they trust the data with somebody, they just want to make sure it's kept safe, of course. And so the data protection regime that we sort of elaborated and set up is sort of very elaborately built up, especially on the level of, let's say, how to really, if something goes wrong, what sort of procedures are in place, how can people be assured that, if they have reason to suspect that something wrong has been done with the data, how they can get sort of it remedied and moving forward. But the key point that when it comes to that is, as soon as that is there, we found out that people's basic trust is ensured, and they're happy to actually then accept government services. Mm-hmm. Because the other thing is that by trusting the data with the government, they get the benefit. They get the benefit of easier access to the services, not having to travel as much, not having to spend as much time in the offices. Especially from companies' point of view, but also private citizens, they save time that they could use for productive reasons, being with a family, whatever. So basically, as long as the basic sort of data protection is assured, in Estonia at least, people are happy to use the services because it makes just life so much easier and better for them. And the other aspect is that one thing is the legal side, but very shortly put, in Estonia we have tried to figure out a lot of the things, how to also give people effective control of that data, and I'll explain very briefly what I mean. So one thing is that in Estonian law it says, yes, people own their data, so which means that I have to be able to control who has access to that, and But for example, into our services, we have then built up also ways to see that. So for example, if in my electronic health records, I can have an overview who has been accessing my data. If I have suspicion that somebody who had no business looking at my stuff, I can make claims that we have had some nurses fined and so forth. Or I can block access to my data. But the key thing is that by default, my data will be there to be reused by different parts of government. But if I don't want that for whatever reason, I can limit that. And that's what I mean by the effective control. So legal framework, together with these kind of effective sort of service controls, that have led to people being sort of very trusting towards the government with the data.
Councillor Suku, the rhetorical question would be why we've chosen Estonia, and Mr. Tibbets in his introductory remarks, talked about it. Estonia, when you look at the index created by the United Nations in terms of e-government, Estonia rates high up there. I think somewhere like 15th, and it moved up some 5 points or 5 places in a matter of a 2-year period as well. When an article on Bloomberg View talks about one of the key elements of the Estonian system, and what it says there, it says a key element of the Estonian system has been mandatory use of digital identification. Every Estonian citizen now carries an identification card with a chip that makes it possible to sign documents electronically. The concept is appealing in terms of convenience, but privacy advocates have some concerns about it. We here in the Cayman Islands, we have started, I remember MLA Alfonso Wright headed up a team in trying for us to develop a national identification card here in the Cayman Islands. We have challenges because we have British Nationality Act. We have our domestic legislation in terms of Caymanian status. So defining a Caymanian or a person who may hold a Cayman Islands passport but not necessarily possess Caymanian status, but it is still possible. So that is one of the challenges that we have in terms of identifying. But we could have a national identification card that identifies Caymanians, and then one that identifies others who are non-Caymanians, but they can all be basically on the same system. Yeah. First, through you, just let's talk about the national identification card, and then we'll ask again Mrs. Sakut to talk about Estonia in relation to that as well.
Well, first of all, let me just say good morning to the listening public, and my apologies for being tardy this morning.
No problem at all.
Traffic
we understand why.
Something else we're working on. I know there's a lot of anxiety around the whole concept of a national ID. But, what they have done in Estonia and what we plan to do here is to keep it simple. Your national ID is nothing more than a way for the system to identify you. So it doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, in terms of your identifier. That information is already in the system. What the identifier will do is link you to that information. So, we don't have to go through too many discussions about how do you segregate, expats from Caymanians and so on. Once you're in the system, the government already has that information, but we just have to link you to it. So it's a simple, straightforward solution, but for an e-government platform to perform and work efficiently, we have to have that national ID in place. I understand in Estonia, as soon as a child is born, they're basically assigned a national ID. I know there were some religious concerns. Some groups may not want to have a national ID for religious reasons. There are solutions for that as well. They were quite creative. I think it was in another jurisdiction, but Armenia, where they gave them a number which identified them as someone who didn't want a national ID, but in that sense, it became a national ID anyway, or it was an identifier that could be used. So we have to bear in mind the anxiety that people may feel about having a national ID, but in the big picture, the overall scheme of things, it's a simple idea, simple concept. There's nothing sinister behind it. it just for the system to work properly, for your information to be properly processed and used across the different government departments and entities, we need to have that central identifier that says this is OC Corner. This is not Alva Suku or Alva Suku Senior. Because in those cases, in my case especially, I'm junior, so I've throughout my life had issues with people not quite sure if it's me or my father that they're dealing with in terms of looking at a piece of paper. The national ID will eliminate all those issues.
Okay, I think we have about 2 minutes. Anything else you want to add to that, Mr. Sekut, in relation to the national ID? And then later on, we want to talk about voting as well, online voting, in Estonia.
I think my message here would be this, that actually having a digital identity is also a measure of data protection. And it's a measure of data protection in a sense that, this allows me to have a very secure access to my data as well. So basically one thing is, is the government sort of abusing data, right? Which can be controlled by data protection regime and stuff like that we talked about. But the other things but we also don't want just random people, accessing my stuff. And without the secure authentication, at least in Estonia, we cannot imagine how to secure that. Logins, passwords, these are just not secure enough at all, right? So it doesn't have to be a card, but some form of secure identity is also the way to actually keep your data safe if you use the services. And most probably you want to use the services.
Okay. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I am your host, Dorrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Alva Suku, who's the MLA representing the District of Bordentown in our Legislative Assembly, and he's also the councillor, and he also has responsibility for e-government. We also have with us Mr. Ian Tibbets, who's the Director of e-government for the Cayman Islands government, and Mr. Seem Sekut, who's the ICT Policy Advisor to the Prime Minister and the government of Estonia. Lots to talk about. We're going to our headline news. When we come back, we'll have more to discuss on e-government in Estonia and the Cayman Islands, so please stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I am your host, Dorrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Alva Suku, MLA and Councillor. We have Mr. Ian Tibbets, who is the Director of e-Government for the Cayman Islands Government. And we have with us Mr. Seem Sekut, who is the ICT Policy Advisor to the Prime Minister and the government of Estonia. And Estonia is getting high praises and raves from all sectors in relation to their e-government initiative and the success of e-government in Estonia itself. So much so that Finland is also adopting the Estonian model as well. Again, some of the highlights, and we talked about this earlier, digital privacy is, and we talked about data protection. In Estonia, it's enshrined in law, and there are stiff penalties for those persons who abuse privacy, the right of privacy. And another key factor is that medical records, and I think, again, something that would be attractive here in the Cayman Islands, we have lots of people who drive cars, lots of people who go to medical doctors or government hospitals as well as private hospitals. And medical records are owned by the individual. That is key, because when you have a paper trail now, you can only see your medical records if you ask the doctor to see them. You go to a doctor, and the doctor has the records in front of him as opposed to you having them in front of you. So again, key to that. But I'll hand over to you guys because you know exactly what it is that you want to highlight here.
I'll just say one very brief thing. So, and even not about Estonia, but let's looking at other countries. Take, I don't know, hopefully you've heard of the case of Michael Schumacher, right? The famous Formula 1 driver. Mm-hmm. When he had a skiing accident and went to coma and so forth. His medical record became public. Because it had been on paper. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows who did that and how they got access and so forth. Had it been digital, that would have been a footprint. With digital, there's always a record of some log saying, look, who accessed the data, who got it out, etc., etc. So even if you cannot undo the privacy violation, you can still, hold them accountable for that. So yeah, that's why in Estonia we say that digital is, we consider to be much more sort of secure than any paper, really.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I mean, paper-based systems are intrinsically insecure because they're just by the nature of it information being on a piece of paper. You can't keep track of that. You can't constantly know where that paper is. But with a digital record, you know where the information is. You know who has access to it. You can control who has access to it, and you can lock it down in a way that it can't be copied or replicated. Mm-hmm. So it's much more secure. You can encrypt. You can't encrypt the piece of paper. So in terms of protecting people's data and information, going digital is actually much more secure and a more efficient way of doing it.
Okay. And to both Mr. Suku and Mr. Tibbetts, based on your discussions that you've had so far, can you share with our listening audience some of the aspects of e-government in Estonia that you find attractive and possibly easy to incorporate and to implement in the Cayman Islands?
Well, where do I start? I'm extremely excited. I had, coming from an IT background, in my mind, I already had a concept of where we wanted to go and a vision. But having the team from Estonia here has brought to light so many similarities from their beginnings to ours. We have a similar background where we have systems that are sort of distributed all over the place, data all over the place. There's no core e-government platform to speak of currently. Their model actually builds on that. So we don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. We don't have to tear down everything that's been built and start over. What we can do now is start to build on top of that. And the distributed nature of our what we've done so far actually adds to the security of it. There's no central point to attack if someone wants to hack and steal person's information or get access to government. You might attack the general registry, but that doesn't give you access to the HSA.
Because all you're going to get is what's there.
There.
Yeah.
And our job then is to, of course, implement an interoperative framework where you can access seamlessly across all systems the information that you need. So we add layers of security on top of that and layers of communication layers. So what we have now, we can build on, and we can quickly, and that's the key for me, because I want to see this done, yesterday. We can quickly now move to an e-government platform that is going to be a new revenue stream for government. It is going to make government much more efficient and effective, and it is going to boost our private sector partners. It's going to give them access to government that they never had before. I don't know if people get as excited as I do about technology, but it's mind-blowing what we can do. We were just talking about e-voting. That is now a very distinct possibility. I wouldn't say for the next election, but we could maybe introduce a pilot we were talking about where absentee ballots are no longer paper-based. We could have people voting, students from university voting online. It's very easy for us now to move forward with that.
Okay. Now, one do you see, Mr. Sikut, sorry, I got to make sure I don't, I separate Mr. Suku from Mr. Sikut. Any challenges in relation to elderly population who are really not up to speed with the digital age, but with the invention, with now having smartphones and everything else, no one necessarily will need, a laptop or an iPad. Tell us what Estonia has done in that regard.
I think you actually said the key word yourself. I mean, let's say compared to the situation here at the year of 2015, let's say where we started from, 20 years ago, was quite different. I mean, back in the day, handling a digital device, let's say just even a personal computer at the day, that was pretty complicated. There's mouse, keyboard stuff, interface. I mean, you gotta figure all that out. Now with an sort of iPad, for example, it's so much more accessible, or any tablet, for that reason. So basically what I'm trying to say is that where technology is today, that sort of learning curve or that sort of obstacle is way smaller way smaller, and we see that clearly in Estonia as well. Over the past few years, I'd say every year we have so many more elderly people actually, becoming regular internet users because it's just so much easier. That's one part. Secondly, what we have done a lot is actually these kind of training and awareness building. Together with the private sector, we invested over the years quite a lot into giving people who otherwise didn't have the access or the ability to use things on internet, give them the experience of that, and the skill is needed for that. So that can be done. And the third point I want to make is that so a lot of it comes down to actually the design of services, how intuitive and easy to use they are. Of course, the easier they are, the less is also the hurdle, right? So in Estonia, we're also still learning the ropes how to really do nice and easy services. Everything's available almost online, but still, not everything is as easy as it could be. So there's always something you can improve or make better. But yeah, easy design is another way how to not have a hurdle. And my last word, we see this all over the world. If the community is tight, as I imagine it is in Cayman, and so that's the impression I'm getting, well, obviously there's somebody who can help the elderly out, be it your kids, grandchildren, neighbors, social worker, whatever, right? So, but the service can still be online.
And what Estonia has done is, they've launched a series of training programs to get people who are not necessarily up to speed, savvy, tech savvy, and able to access their platform. So we'd have to do something similar. We'd have to build into our plan training and make that available to the public.
Now, in the Cayman Islands, we have seen our share of charlatans and snake oil salesmen, come and go. But in the case of Estonia, well documented. And if you Google it, you see, the high praises that are heaped on Estonia in terms of its success. Without wanting you to tip your hand or anything else, is it the intention of the Cayman Islands government to capitalize on what we have in terms of the expertise from Estonia and utilize that?
Well, definitely. This week has been all about that. That whole initiative, which is to meet with the experts from Estonia, to have them interact with the private sector, which we've done. They've interacted with the public in general, and also with the civil service, and even the politicians. So we've extracted as much, I think, benefit as possible from this visit. And it was well worth the effort. I have to thank Ian for arranging this. He's done a spectacular job in helping me to lead this initiative with his background, his technology background in particular. Ian knows exactly what it is the government's vision is. And he's able to tie us into the private sector and make it a partnership, a true partnership. But I'm the amount of information that's been shared, the discussions, the very robust discussions that have been taking place this week with various individuals who've been involved in this, I'm extremely encouraged. I am, raring to go, and I think as early as next week, the Deputy Governor wants the steering committee to reconvene so that we can now make some decisions and move forward.
Right, and that was going to be my next question. Where do we go from here? What is the next step? And to Mr. Sekut, I would say, ask you, what would be your advice to the Cayman Islands government, bearing in mind the stage that we are at, if we can call it a stage in terms of e-government. We certainly have laid the groundwork for it by appointing an e-government czar, to take this forward, and we certainly have a commitment, from the government, and we have a councillor who has the background experience in it. First, Mr. Suku, next steps and the advice from you, Mr. Sekut.
Well, next steps, we obviously the steering committee sort of sits on top of this whole initiative. And that's made up of various individuals who have different backgrounds and experiences, but all contribute strongly to the effort. We steer the way. So, to put it simple, we have to meet now and decide what model we're going to adopt, what budgetary requirements are there, what the overall strategy is. We have to sell that plan obviously to caucus and to the leadership in the civil service. We can't do this in isolation. This can't be a political agenda. This has to be a shared effort between civil service and the elected government as well. So that's where we are now, and we're now evaluating what's already there, what's in place, and we're very shy at bragging about what's already been developed, but we have an amazing amount of services already available to the public. The key to that is that they're all sort of isolated. So you go to one department, you create credentials there. You go to another one, you have to do the same thing. What we want to do now is make it seamless, and moving. That's the next step for me. And also we have to tackle the whole idea of digital IDs and security. So for me, that's the next important decision that has to be made. How we're going to create this interoperability framework on top of what we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think. So
Sure.
I think quickly, for the steering committee, I mean, one of the things that the Estonian team have been particularly stressed to us is the fact that obviously you can't just take one country's e-governance system and apply it, carte blanche to another
Precisely,
countries,
yes.
right? So what we have is a lot of valuable information and assistance, and now we as a steering committee will take that information and put together a plan for the Cayman Islands. But there are absolutely many things that we recognize we can take advantage of from their model, and best in class, and move us forward in decades in a short period of time, versus having to go through a slow route of doing this ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. Sakut, your advice to the Cayman Islands government?
I think at first to repeat what Ian was saying. I mean, so on Estonian side, we are very happy to help with, based on the know-how and even the solutions that we have. But at the same time, ultimately, it's a Cayman Islands effort, right? So I mean, the effort of the government here that will do the trick. It cannot be any sort of off-the-shelf software or any kind of foreign experts just doing stuff for you guys, right? So that's one thing. But I mean, to sum it all up, I mean, sort of our Estonian sort of key experience and where to start from. So, I mean, let's say 3 or 4 things that we saw that worked in Estonia, and I have no reason to doubt that they shouldn't work here the same way, right? So, first of all, the key question, yes, I mean, we would agree that especially if there's already some services there, to, put the shared platforms in place, be them legal, like data protection regime, or be them sort of in technical, like interoperability stuff. That's one thing. Secondly, it's important to agree on a strategy, but that doesn't mean lengthy discussions and sort of lengthy documents as such, but exactly, what are the basic directions we go. And the third thing, then start quickly piloting them. So exactly, I think a lot of it is just getting the momentum going, and as soon as people, both in government, the colleagues, as well as the public, start seeing the value and the benefits, I mean, they are much more eager to rally behind and support next things, even harder decisions if need be. So yeah, getting the ball rolling, I think that's the key part, and if it gets rolling, there's no stopping to that.
Okay, now I know you're new here to the Cayman Islands, but with an island or a group of islands, 3 islands with a population of anywhere between 55,000 persons, and a high proportion of people who come here to work and love the Cayman Islands and want to live here as well. The whole issue of citizenship in the Cayman Islands can become quite controversial at times, and can become certainly quite political, at times as well. So it is like, parceling out something to someone. We're not so free-handed, if I can use that term, in terms of the giving of our citizenship. So getting it on paper alone is difficult, but I see you have Estonian citizenship, as well. So yours compared to ours, Tell our listening audience about the E-citizenship, Estonian citizenship.
Quite true. I mean, everybody in the world can apply to become e-resident. So not actual citizen, but e-resident of Estonia. That means that you get a digital identity like us Estonians have, and you can access the services that Estonians otherwise enjoy, especially around the area of cross-border business. So signing things digitally over distance, setting up bank accounts, setting up your company online, administering the company online, everything involved in that is what currently the e-residency allows. And we see lots of excitement for that. And the whole reason was why we started this is that we would be happy for our country to grow. So if we don't make enough babies, at least we get digital, sort of more digitally people and users, right? So
virtual residents.
Virtual residents, exactly. And but yeah, this is something our government is very excited about. It's still like a 9-month program, and well, given our country size, we have 5,500 people already signed up. Let's say actual e-residents out there in the world. Some actually in Cayman Islands too, I have to say. So yeah, it's only picking up.
I mean, if you think about that idea, I think that would be much more acceptable to the majority of Caymanians because when you have an e-resident, they don't reside in the country, but they're able to access the government services and the private sector services online. So that, again, opens up potential revenue streams for the private sector and for government. People, the directors, shareholders of these offshore companies would love to be able to access our services directly, and they would pay for that.
Okay. I know you gentlemen have to go on, I believe.
I just got a text saying that they want us to come at 9, so we have a little bit of time if you want to chat a bit more, or if you have a call. Okay.
Do we have any callers online at this point in time? No callers, so we can continue to talk. We'll continue on then until about 8:45, and then we'll have our other guests on at that. Okay, folks, I want to remind you, you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor. My guests in the studio with me this morning, we have MLA and Councillor Mr. Alva Suku. We have with us also Mr. Ian Tibbets, who is the Director of E-Government for the Government of the Cayman Islands. And we have with us Mr. Sim Sukut, who is the ICT Policy Advisor for the Prime Minister and Government of Estonia. Far away from home, but certainly right here in the Cayman Islands with us. We want you to stay tuned. We have lots more we want to talk about as well. We're going to continue this conversation for another 10 or 15 minutes, as well. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record, where we're discussing Estonia's e-government success as well as the e-government initiative in the Cayman Islands. And that discussion is taking place with Mr. Alva Suku, who's the MLA representing the District of Bordentown in our legislature. And he's also the councillor and responsible for e-government in the Cayman Islands. We also have with us Mr. Ian Tibbets, who is the Director of e-government for the Cayman Islands government, and Mr. Sim Sikut, who is far away from home. He is the Digital Policy Advisor in the Strategy Unit for the Prime Minister and the Government of Estonia. And I'm going to hand over to them so that they can get across to our listening audience exactly those points that they want to hear. I'm told we have one caller, so let's grab the caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning, O.C. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Morning, Ian and Al. And this is Mark Whiteside. I attended a conference on Tuesday.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I just wanted to, I very much appreciated attending that conference, but being in that business myself, I think it's something that's very important for Cayman, but perhaps you could give the listening community examples of what they can access via such a system, for example, school records, health records, etc., and how it also ties into some of the financial services as well. So that might be useful for the listening public. But what I would say is, for those listening, if you just approach this with an open mind, it's politically neutral. It's very good for the country, and I fully support what's being done. So maybe you could give some examples from a practical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, caller. Very good point.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate the comments.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
I'll let Ian delve into that question.
So the I think Constance mentioned something earlier about where to start, right? And when you consider that Estonia has somewhat 4,000 e-services available to their citizens, that list could be very long, right? But he did point out a few classic ones right there, actually. But it's been very engaging to see some of the services that they have demonstrated to us. Some of the things along the lines, as he said, of medical records. Basically, one of the fundamentals to the Estonia model as well is that they have a single portal where you can go in and access all the government services, basically, right? And in there, you go in, and if you look at your own data, which you control, as he explained, it identifies your general practitioner, your physician, and from there you can basically determine whether you're going to share your information with the doctors or not, and subsequently, if you've authorized that general practitioner, then later on, if he refers you to another expert, he can authorize sharing the data with that expert. But you as a data owner have control of that data. The doctors and in the medical field in Estonia are required to input the data digitally, so you will always have a full your data will always be available for you. Within the education system, they have integrated their e-government initiatives completely. Everything from the fact that their digital ID card is actually what the students use to enter the school. So it becomes you got the physical security tied to it there as well, but all of their grades are immediately available online. So the students can see. I know we have some cases of that available here in Cayman today. The school my son goes to, I'm able to see that information, but it's not across the board, and it's certainly not it's not necessarily available with some of our public schools. They showed some examples of how it's used in the police side of things, where if a policeman stops you, basically, once you don't have to carry your driver's license anymore. You don't even have to carry your digital ID. You just need to know your digital identifier, and they can use that to reference and verify your identity, and what rights you have, whether you're allowed to drive, etc.
And sorry to jump in, but just on that topic of policing, that's one of the things that we hear criticized quite a bit here, is the level of policing, and it needs to be better and so on. What they're able to do is actually have their e-citizens report problems. So, for example, I live on a certain street, and there's a lot of speeding in that area. Residents of that area can actually submit online a complaint and say, look, there's a lot of speeding here. That is then part of their what do you call it, the geo. Well, anyway, it's a system where the police can then look at that and identify hotspots.
Okay.
So they can say, okay, Spots Newlands, there's a lot of complaints about speeding there, and they can target that area. If there's complaints of littering in another area, but using the data that is submitted individually, that paints a picture that you can then form a strategy to tackle those problems. And that can be applied to anything, not just policing.
Okay, we're going to go to our final comments from everyone. We'll start with Mrs. Sakut, and then
two comments, I guess. I'll just briefly continue with the last discussion, but let's say of all the services that we have, I think the sort of most beneficial ones at the end of the day have been around business creation, business sort of administration, all that kind of things. So all the sort of transactions that companies need to do to have the companies up and going, right? So I mean, this is exactly where making these as efficient as possible have really sort of reduced the red tape, and that means companies are operate more efficiently. They are able to bring more revenue in. I know that's the line that Cayman Islands already is taking, but I mean, there's exactly always more to do on that front in Estonia as well. But my last point is really, I mean, it's been quite a week for us too in Cayman Islands here. So definitely appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, if we can be of help from Estonia's side, very happy to take this forward.
Okay, Mr. Tibbetts.
Well, one of the things I'd like to do is also extend our thanks to the Estonian team, because it's been tremendous. They have been very open and sharing with us, and just to learn some of the approaches that they've taken and some of the lessons that they've learned has been tremendous for us. So I think we're armed with a ton of information, much of which we can take and Caymanize and implement, very quickly. We just have to follow our processes in terms of good governance and procurement, and then there are many things that it's brought up for us that we realize we have to put together strategic decisions upon and our positions and put those forward through caucus and cabinet to get decisions.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Suku.
Well, just obviously want to thank the team from Estonia for joining us this week. As Ian said, the tons of information that we have gleaned this week have saved us so much time in research and making plans and so forth. It's valuable information for us. And I also want to thank Ian and his team and the Deputy Governor and the Cabinet Secretary, because they're all wholeheartedly on board. And I think across the civil service leadership, what I want to do now is to build the excitement for the people out there in the public to know what's coming and what we're planning to offer, and to encourage people to continue to contribute and be involved in this process. We're going to revolutionize the way that we do business in Cayman through this, and the way that just the ordinary citizen lives, from the students right up to the elderly. So I want everyone involved and engaged and pay attention to what we're doing and take advantage of every opportunity to contribute to this process, because it's it's groundbreaking and it's going to push this country forward.
Mm-hmm. And certainly you will get buy-in to the system when people realize that most of their personal data, that if they have control over that themselves, that to me is the reinforcing point, and will certainly get buy-in to the system from that as well. Well, I want to thank you, gentlemen. I'm sure that the conversation could continue on. And Mr. Sekut, you enjoy the rest of your stay here in the Cayman Islands, and maybe we'll see you back here again sometime soon.
Hope so.
And I think so.
Okay. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor, and my guests on the first portion of For the Record were Mr. Alva Suku, who's the MLA representing the District of Bordentown in our Legislative Assembly. He's also the councillor and has responsibility for e-government. Mr. Ian Tibbetts, who's the Director of e-government for the Cayman Islands government, and Mr. Sim Sekut, who is the ICT Policy Advisor to the Prime Minister and Government of Estonia. Please stay tuned. When we come back, we'll have our regular guests on. We will be talking about the Electoral Boundaries Commission report. Where do we go from there? And we will continue our conversation in relation to the whole issue of money transfer in the Cayman Islands. And if we have enough time, we can talk about the price of gasoline, of fuel as well. So please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record, where I'm your host, Dorrit Connor, and now my guest in the studio with me is Mr. Steve McFeel, prominent Caymanian local attorney here with us, historian, constitutional expert, jack of all trades. The only thing he doesn't have yet is that QC behind, his name, and we hope one day that will come. We don't want it to be an honorary one that is bestowed upon you, Mr. McFeel. When you're gone, you should have that now, and that needs to come one of these days, we hope.
Thank you, Ori. Thank you for asking me back again. When in 2003, the quincentennial year, and Mr. Watler, Bernard Watler, was the chairman of the Quincentennial Committee. He recommended that QCs be granted to several Caymanian lawyers. One of them was myself, Sherry Borden, Mr. Truman Borden, Keith Collins, Mr. David Rich, and I can't remember who the other one was. And we never got it. What I received from the Quincentennial Committee, along with Mr. Truman Bodden, was a certificate for our contribution in law to the Cayman Islands, but we never got the QCs. Other people got it. Unusually, the QCs are awarded for people who are active in the court system. And I have been active in the court system now for over 37 years, or something, 35, 37 years. Nearly every one of my colleagues that I went to school with around the Caribbean, in other countries, are either QCs, high court judges, or court appeal judges, or whatever. I was not an establishment person, so I didn't expect to get any honors like that, accolades like that. I was not an establishment person, so it really doesn't bother me. I know other people have been advocating for me to get silk, but I have never been an establishment person, so I don't expect the establishment in return to honor me with any accolades like that. So it really doesn't bother me. I'm like Ian Ramsey. I think when they finally gave it to him, he gave it back and said he didn't want it. That was Margaret Ramsey's father. And he was one of the top lawyers in the Caribbean. And it didn't bother him not to have QC after his name. So I still do work. I still do work in the courts, and half of the things that I do in the courts are not mentioned. Because I don't go out. As Arden McLean said, he said, "What's wrong with you, Steve? You don't let people know what you do and stuff." But that's not my nature. I have never been like that at all, because I think that knowledge is something that I am proud of having knowledge, but being compensated for it by getting public accolades, it doesn't bother me at all.
And we certainly know, one area of knowledge that you now have is the whole issue of the report of the Electoral Boundary Commission.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, that has not been yet submitted to the Legislative Assembly.
That's right.
And so you're constrained in terms of what you can say.
I am constrained in what I can say. The Boundary Commissioners made their presentation of their report as the Constitution provides to the governor and to the Legislative Assembly. However, until the report is made public, that is, until it's laid on the table in the Legislative Assembly and becomes a public document, we are not able to make public announcements on it because it's still a private document. It's very interesting. All the things that I learned. Doing a commissioner after being appointed by the governor, you never stop learning. At my age, I'm amazed of the things I didn't know about the elections and about the electoral system in the Cayman Islands. It was very exciting for us. It was hard work because we had to work like days and days and days and days trying to separate the districts now into constituencies, because we had to count every house and every person in the Cayman Islands. But it's the knowledge of the statistics that we had to use that we gained from other institutions and entities that really opened my eyes to a lot of things in the Cayman Islands that I didn't understand. But as soon as the Boundary Commission report is made public, that is, as soon as it's laid on the table, I don't know if it's going to go before the Legislative Assembly this October or this November. But as soon as that happens, I will be more than willing to come and talk about it and to say why we came to the conclusion that we did and why we made the recommendations that we did in that report.
Okay. I know, Mr. Macfield, you want to talk about the new proposed legal aid bill. And I'll just read something here from Cayman News Service. The Attorney General has said that new legislation currently being drafted to address the myriad issues regarding the the provision of legal aid includes the creation of a new position of a legal aid director who will be based at the courts and decide who gets the public funding for their cases. With more demand on legal aid as a result of the Bill of Rights and the Children's Law, the tab rose to over $2 million this financial year, and over $1.9 million has been budgeted for the 2015-2016 financial year. I know we want to talk about that. We have about a minute, so you can just sort of introduce the concept, and then we'll get to the meat of it after we go to our headline news.
Yes. First, I would like to say that we do not have a legal aid bill. We do not have a legal aid law in the Cayman Islands. What the courts have been dispensing legal aid and deciding who gets legal aid has been under what they call the Poor People's Law, an old law that is over near 50 or 60, more years old. It's almost 2 or 3 generations old, and that was because people who could not afford to go to court, the government assisted them under the Poor Persons Law, and then the government gave the courts the money to pay the lawyers to come to courts to represent them. Now, what they're trying to do now is something that Teresa Lewis Pitcairn and I proposed in 2010. We proposed to set up a legal aid office, a legal aid office in Georgetown that would have provided legal aid for everyone in the Cayman Islands who could not afford to have a lawyer, and for everything. It would not be an offense test, or it would be a means test. If you could not afford a lawyer, and you were before the labor board, or immigration board, or divorce court, or civil court, or criminal court, you would get legal advice from the legal service office. Now, what we did is that we made a proposal to the government, and in that proposal, we would have saved the government at that time something like $800,000 every year if they had accepted our proposal. But when we made this proposal, all hell broke loose in the legal profession and with some of the legal fraternity. It even got so bad that the Governor Jack got into it and ordered a commission of inquiry into our proposal to see whether it or not it would be feasible. Now, what we did is that we looked at the legal aid in Canada and the United Kingdom and in Jamaica. We traveled to Jamaica and examined their legal aid system, and we also asked the director of legal aid in Jamaica to come down to Cayman Islands and speak to the cabinet. And he also appeared before the commission of inquiry that the governor set up. And he stated that if Jamaica was able to get the legal aid system that we were proposing, that they would be very happy. Now, what happened to that is became a political football as well as legal football, because what we were doing, and we were going to secure premises. Can you imagine a 5-year lease on a premises that was already fitted out with something like 9 offices for $19 a square foot for 5 years, a lease. So we were getting ready to save the government a whole lot of money.
Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, Mr. Steve MacPhail, talking about legal aid at this point in time. We're going to headline news. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation and anything else that you may want to talk about as well. So please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record, where I have in the studio with me one of our usual guests, Mr. Steve MacPhail, trying to track Mr. Saunders down as well. But we suspect that he may have gotten caught in traffic because he was coming down for an 8:30 start as opposed to a 7:30 start this morning. And if you don't leave home before 7 o'clock, you can expect, up until about 8:30, 9 o'clock, that you're going to get caught in traffic. Of course, that is due mainly to road upgrades that are being undertaken, especially in Georgetown and in particular the Smith Road area as well. the whole issue of legal aid, and we mentioned earlier, Mr. Macfield, that the issues arising as a result, of the Bill of Rights, legal interpretations that anyone who's detained by police
Yes.
and who does not have the financial resources to have access to a lawyer must be given the privilege of having legal aid in the Cayman Islands. We've seen some. I think a few years ago, there was one particular large law firm that was providing pro bono work in some instances. But as far as and we have a large legal fraternity here in the Cayman Islands, how much have they taken up in terms of providing legal assistance to people who are challenged with it? Are they doing their share fair?
No, really, they're not really. They're providing very little assistance. When I was president of the Bar Association and also vice president, we had this. This goes back now for decades. Notwithstanding the money they make, they refuse to give anything back to the society in which they make the money from, and this has been a sore thumb with the politicians who were interested in them making a contribution to the society, and in fact that is one of the reasons back in 2002 that the Honorable McKeever Bush at the time increased the amount of money that they had to pay to keep their law firms going and work permits for their lawyers to be able to extract something from them to be able to put into the government that the government could then transfer it into a legal aid fund. Very few of them, if any, gave pro bono work to the public. So let's get back to what we were proposing right now. The legal aid fund pays $135 an hour for a legal aid lawyer, and you can imagine the amount of hours that people might be put in that amounts to the amount of money that the Attorney General says now that they have to put into the legal aid fund, millions and millions and millions. Mm-hmm. What we were proposing in 2010 is to cut out the $135 per hour, and we were going to hire 7 legal aid lawyers on a monthly basis, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year salary. That lawyer would be in the office, getting paid a monthly salary, and he would do legal aid for anything that came in the office. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And along with that, our proposal was that each lawyer would have 2 Caymanian law students along with them, working along with them, getting experience, so that they could become legal aid lawyers in the end when the regular lawyers were not available, and we were going to pay them the law students. We were going to pay them $25 a month for their part-time work in the legal clinic. They would like interview the people who come to see before they got to the lawyers, to help the lawyers to perfect their files. Mm-hmm. We were going to have 3 or 4 paralegal secretaries, a receptionist, and a messenger, and that all came out to just over $1 million something a year, with paying pension and insurance.
Now, how would that have affected the equality of arms in terms of would that have included having Queen Counsel,
yes,
there as well? Because if you have the other side who's represented by QC, you would want to have the same thing.
We had a special fund. Uh-huh. We had a special fund for QCs. In other words, the amount of money that we were telling the government that this is what you have to put in, that we could draw from, included $250,000, $300,000 for QCs to come on, and we had contacted QCs in different jurisdictions, and we told them this is the position, and they said they would gladly come to do the work in Cayman Islands system, because they were happy to have the exchange, the money, uh-huh, the exchange rate that we were paying.
Okay, we have one caller online. Let's go to the caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Rossi. Good morning to Mr. McField.
Good morning,
Good morning,
sir.
Amjad. How are you?
and I don't know who else with
Just the two of us, like the song says,
Okay.
just the two of us.
That's Mr. McField alone is enough. It's
Thank you.
a big guest, you have.
Oh,
today.
yes.
This issue of the money transfer, Mr. OC, first I want to say I support that proposal was Mr. McField speaking about. I think it's very smart and save the country millions of dollars, and I hope it have ears to listen. That's all what I have to say about that. It's very sad, that when somebody propose something, save the country millions of dollars and nobody listen to it. It's very sad. But what I want to say about this money transfer issue, this problem will never go unless Cayman implement the central bank. There is no country in the world can operate financially without a central bank. The money go in bags to United States because, the exchange rate in Cayman is one price, and that will make the banks lose money. So they prefer to go and bank this money in United States because the U.S. dollar is in United States. The price will not be big different than what is happening in Cayman. So if we have a central bank, every morning the central bank in Cayman will issue a price for US dollar and Canadian dollar and other. And the banks will have to bank all the US dollars in the central bank in Cayman. So we don't have shortage of any money, any US dollar or Canadian dollar or whatever dollar. That's the only solution. So Minister of Finance and Minister of Financial Services need to get together and start, prepare to make, the central bank and, the head of the SEMA in Cayman need to admit and tell the general public that this is the real problem. And they are not telling the general public anything. This problem will never go until the day they implement the central bank.
But you did hear the minister here on Monday talk about that is one of the things that they're basically, well, not so much a central bank, but looking at the CIDB to see, how that could be, converted to assist. But I hear what you're saying in relation to central bank, and I must say that I'm not well versed in that area, of finance, so I can't comment on it too much, and I'll certainly do my research and see what the role of a central bank is, and how that would how it's done in other jurisdictions as well. But you're certainly your suggestion has some merit to it and something that should be considered. So I want to thank you very much for that, Amjad.
Thank you.
And Amjad, your idea is not new, and we already had the foundation of a central bank when we had the Government Savings Bank. The Government Savings Bank was the first bank in Cayman Islands, and that lasted up until the 1980s, 70s and 80s. And we, for some reasons, destroyed the Government Savings Bank because it was in competition with the other banks that were coming in. The Government Savings Bank was very instrumental, and that could have been the foundation of a central bank. But in the early 1980s, the concept of a central bank was touted by a man who's now deceased, Jim Borden Jr., Jim Borden's the second. We call him Jim Borden Jr. And it caused it sort of caused a furor in the banking system and in the financial system. And he proposed a government central bank that all the banks would have to bank with, and that the government central bank would have gotten fees from them for the same thing you say for storing foreign currency and money exchange and transfers. And when he figured it out at the time, I would say around 1980, 1981, something like that. a government a central bank would have made over $800,000 a year then. Money would be coming to the government, but of course nobody wanted it. It came from someone who they consider was a fool, and now they're scrambling now to try to get some version of that into force. But that's what we are. We never sit and consider things. We never sit and analyze things and see whether they're the pros and cons of them. If it doesn't come from the right person, we throw it out. Or if it doesn't come from someone from abroad, from another country, who comes in and tell us what to do, we say it's no good. And so the problem that we have is that we are our own worst enemies, and that we seem not to be able to figure things out for ourselves. But they have a second chance now with the government, with the what's it again? The CIDB.
Yeah.
The CIDB.
Cayman Islands
Development Bank. And I don't know why they do not develop that bank into a full-fledged banking system that Caymanians would have will have a bank that they can rely on and that can help them in times of need.
Okay, folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor. My guest with me this morning, Mr. Steve Macfield. 2 callers on the line. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to go straight to the phone line. So callers, please hang in there. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. Going straight to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to you, Mr. O.C. and to Mr. Steve Macfield.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
I often wondered about that myself. I didn't know the government had planned to go back to it. But why didn't they carry on with it? Why didn't they fund it, the CIDB? And as we know, you're quite rightly said, Mr. Macfield, it was a government savings bank. I think it was the initiative of Commissioner Hurst, wasn't it?
Yes,
long
ago, yes.
He died, he put it in place. Because he died at the age of 40 in 1912. He buried in Dixie Cemetery, I'm pretty sure of that. You're quite right, because that would be competition for those big boys, and that's when they started pouring in here with the big, and realizing that the monies that could be made here from a sort of tax neutral or whatever the convoluted names is for a situation. And that's what happened. The big banking names have always more or less controlled the money throughout the world. J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and so forth. And Vanderbilts even got into it too because of the tremendous wealth from the railways and the other folks. But they did that, and they control a lot of things throughout the whole world. Just a few names in banking, and that's a big problem there. But I thought if they fund it, I'd just like to ask one thing. Wouldn't it require maybe the British government to give us to make it a full-fledged bank and in operation? Like I think the British government has a bank. I mean, the government there has a bank, I believe. But you know a lot more about that than I do. So.
Well, you have the European Central Bank.
Yes.
And then the Chancellor of the Exchequer, or the Chancellor, who's George Osborne, really. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they have the Treasury, Financial Services. But I think it's the European Central Bank.
Yes. I know with the U.S. it's different. The United States government cannot be in any business. But they have the Federal Reserve, yes. and that they supply the money and they control the money. The U.S. government itself, and the U.S. Mint is the largest printing business in the world that prints the money. That the dollar bills alone, if you put them end for end, that they print every year would end up passing the moon. If they were stacked end for end, the amount of dollar bills alone that they print. I don't know if we'd have to get permission from the British government.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so because I don't think so. I could tell you the underlining story of how they destroyed the government savings bank, but it's too long, and
Yes,
and perhaps people might not like what I said, but it was several people who destroyed the government savings bank on a pledge that if you got rid of this bank, what their positions would be in the private sector and in the public sector. But I'm not going into that now. Perhaps I'll put that in my book when I start to write it, finish it. But nearly every substantial country, I say, is our government, our central bank. And what the central bank would do for now is that they would hold a lot of foreign currency, Canadian currency, American currency, and you could go to the government, to the central bank, and you could get foreign currency. Not only that, but these exchange rates, the government said the bank would have cambios at the airport also, where you could go and you could buy foreign currency, and you could change your money, and you might not have to pay 3 and 4% spread to be able to get the currency as the other banks charge. So it was the whole concepts of us making money off of the offshore system, and it was the concepts that they might have to have paid they would have to have paid the government savings bank, give the government savings bank 1/10 of 1% of all the transfers that were made going back through the country that killed the idea, because when Jim Borden Jr. and some of his friends figured out if you had to send wire transfer through the government, through the central bank, and you were paying 1/10 of 1% of all the transfers that were going then through the bank, they figured out the government, Cayman government, would make $700 million every year. That was back in like 81, 82. And they didn't like to see the government making that kind of money. And there are people who doesn't want us to be financially autonomous.
Mm-hmm. Caller, just for your information, actually the Central Bank of the United Kingdom is the Bank of England. And it was established in 1694, and its mission is to promote the good of the people of the United Kingdom. So I would imagine if we had our central bank and we said to promote the good of the Cayman Islands, they couldn't kick about that. We would be mirroring what they're doing in the UK. But I want to thank you there, because we have about 5 minutes to go and we have one more caller online. So caller, thank you very much for that call. Next caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to listen to you all this morning and all your topics that you're covering.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. I think that the banks could really try to help people, in Cayman better. It's heart-wrenching to hear so many people are losing their homes and stuff like that. But so that was kind of on your topic. But I called because of two other topics that I wanted to speak on this morning.
Okay.
One is remember that Heroes Day nominations are about to close on Wednesday. So I want to encourage everybody to fill out their nominations and nominate their agricultural people. That is people who have grown crops and produce, and people who have raised cattle or goats or pigs or anything like that, to make sure that they nominate those people. Don't think that somebody else is going to do it. Take 5 minutes of your time and nominate somebody and get your forms in by next Wednesday the 30th. That's the deadline. After that, no nominations can come in. So just to take your opportunity to do that. And my second thing that I wanted to call about was the museum's 25th anniversary. Remember next Saturday night that we're going to have a fundraiser to be able to put on all the activities we want to do in November and into the coming year for the 25th anniversary, showcasing the museum and what it means to Cayman. It's our living, breathing heritage and culture there at the museum. So next Saturday night, there is a dinner at Schooners, and tickets are only $50. And I know there's a lot of activities that are going on, but with tickets only being $50, you can buy a ticket and support the museum, and you can still support some of the other activities that are going on. So that's next Saturday night, the 3rd. My number is 916-1559. You can call me. I have for both things. If you need nomination forms, I'm here, and you can call that number. And if you need them collected, just let me know. And also for the museum, I have tickets. They're only $50. So our host and the people on the radio this morning, Mr. Macfield.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to make sure that you support us and buy a ticket. They're only $50, and it's a very
Worth the cost.
evening planned for next Saturday. And also for the listening audience, please support the museum and buy a ticket for only $50. Support the museum and our living, breathing building, which is on the waterfront in Georgetown. It is our history. It's an icon. It's withstood so many storms and everything. It was built in 1830, and it's still going strong as our museum. So please support us. My number again is 916-1559. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
caller. Thank you
you.
very much. And we again urge our listening audience to support the museum. One more caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. O.C.
Morning, Miss Georgette.
Good morning, Mr. Steve Macfield, my good friend.
Good morning, Miss
So
Georgette.
good to hear both of you, but especially you, Mr. Macfield.
Good morning, ma'am. And may I wish you a belated happy birthday.
I thank you so very much. I know you read the Bible and you believe in the Bible.
Oh, yes, ma'am. It was not only have I read it. It was one of the subjects that I had to study in school. Scripture was one of the subjects that was the first thing you studied when you came in the morning was scriptures. And not only that, and then that was in the usual day school. And when you went to Sunday school, you also had to study the Bible.
Well, anyway, this is what I want to say. I know you remember, and after I finish, I'm trying to be very brief because I know your time is almost gone. A prophet, the Bible says, has no honor in his own country.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I agree with you. We are our own worst enemies. Unless it's like what the little boy said, come from a forest. Nobody's going to, or very few people want to listen to a Caymanian. So you, as a lawyer and as a sensible man, you said it much better than I could have said it. We here in Caymanian, we are our own worst enemies. I hate to say it because I try to be careful with my words, but it is true. So God bless both of you and your families, and have a wonderful and a safe weekend. And that goes for all the people on our three islands.
And God bless you too, Miss Georgette.
Thank you very much, Miss Georgette.
And I'm still coming to your house. I still promise to come there to look through your collections and stuff, because we are going to need some of the stuff copies of some of the stuff that you have.
Okay. Mr. Macfield, we talked about legal aid.
Yes.
But for the benefit of our listening audience, what's the way forward, with it now in terms of the legal aid bill? Concept?
It looks like they're trying to get something right, because under the old legal aid system, under the poor person's law system, it was a judge of the court who decides who comes before them. Now, I have always said, and will always say, and will always maintain, that a judge should not say who gets legal aid. Because if you have two litigants in court, two people in court, and the judge has to decide which one of them is going to come before him in legal aid, that is not right. So it seems to me now that they're trying to appoint a director of legal aid now, a person who is independent of the bench, who's independent of the system, judicial system, to decide who gets legal aid. That's a step in the right direction. But but what it should be, what it should be, it should be a legal aid office, a legal aid system where everyone who has a legal problem can get legal advice, and it should not be just to go to court that you got legal aid. That is my contention.
Okay.
It should be for everything that you need a legal advice for, and it should and the criteria should be whether you can afford to pay or you can't afford to pay. It should not be for burglary or for theft or for things like that.
Because there are many people who need, like you say, guidance in other areas that are not necessarily going to court, you know, and want that guidance, you know, as well. So will a new bill make provisions for the expansion of legal aid or access to justice?
No, the new bill will only replace the old poor person's law, and it will still be matters before the court, some civil matters before the court, and criminal matters before the court, and it will still be what we call an offense test. Certain offenses you will get legal aid, and certain offenses you will not get legal aid, and it will be some improvement, but not the kind of modernized improvement that we wanted to see, and that happens in other jurisdictions.
Okay, point taken. I know you, like myself, Mr. Macfield, like to keep up with current events, and we see the breaking news in the United States where John Boehner, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and of course he's a congressman from the state of Ohio, has resigned effective the end of October, not only from the speakership, but from the House of Representatives as well. I guess his crowning grace would be having Pope Francis, at his invitation, visit and address a joint meeting as opposed to a joint session of Congress. But he has, withstood an onslaught from his Republican colleagues because they felt that he didn't oppose U.S. President Obama in certain respects. So he's decided to step down, basically, to save. Some are claiming the Republican, party, as well, and to avoid a looming leadership fight that is going to take place in relation to government shutdown and everything. Many speakers we see, that are resigning now. We had the Livingston at one point in time.
Yes.
Resign. Newt Gingrich.
Newt Gingrich
yes.
resigned. Yes.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, the integrity of those people, that when the pressure comes and when they do not have the support, they resign. It is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But when Miss Susan broke that news to me this morning when I came in, right away I thought that something was going to happen when they lost the vote on the Iran. Iran deal.
Yes.
I thought that's not going to go down good with them when they could not get the support to prevent the Iran deal going through, and Obama got that through, and perhaps the Pope's speech got to them too.
Quite.
And in some quarters, if you read the Huffington Post, you will see that there was sort of insinuation too that they are allowing Trump, who was an outsider, to sort of define the way forward for the Republican Party.
Yes.
And I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Yes. Well, Mr. Macfield, I want to thank you again for being here this morning. We know we had to we changed our format and the timing, but you certainly adapted to that, and I just trust and hope that all is well with Christopher.
Yes,
Chris Saunders. We'll continue to try to contact him. It's unlike him, but we will try our best to contact him to find out exactly what's happening.
Yes, sir. And Chris, wherever you are, And if anybody knows where he is, ask him to give me
us
a
a
call, or give us a call, Mr. Connor and I a call, because I miss you this morning.
Folks, I want to remind you that you've been listening to For the Record. I've been your host, and my guest in the studio this morning. We had first talked about e-government in the Cayman Islands. We had Mr. Ian Tibbetts, Mr. Alva Suku, and Mr. Sukut from Estonia here with us. And on the last segment of the show, we had, one of our favorite guests on the show, Mr. A. Steve McFeel. Of course, For the Record was also brought to you by Sagicor, Wise Financial Thinking for Life, as well as Digicel Top Up, where you can send minutes to your loved ones in Jamaica from a Digicel retail location or top-up kiosk, and they will receive double credits plus 7 free days of data when you send $20 or more. And that's your way to stay connected with your loved ones in Jamaica. I want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters keepers. There is someone out there who is less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. We hear continued talk. We heard the Pope in his address to the joint meeting of Congress talk about the more vulnerable in our society. We're hearing more and more about the most vulnerable in our society, and those numbers are increasing on a daily basis in terms of those who are more vulnerable. And we ask you to extend a helping hand to them. No matter how much riches, how much you have in life, you want to extend a helping hand to those who need, not necessarily those who want, because all of those worldly things that we have in life, we all will leave them here at the end of the day. So one thing that you can have, for the rest of your life is the feeling and the knowledge that you have helped someone who is in need. And I urge you to continue to do that. Just helping one needy person will make your day more enjoyable, make your life more enjoyable, as well. I encourage you to continue to listen to Radio Cayman, your radio station, where you get the opportunity to express your views, voice your opinions. Join Sterling Dwayne Ebanks at 12 noon today for Talk Today. Continue to listen to Radio Cayman, and of course rejoin us again on For the Record on Monday at 7:30. I say have a great weekend. God bless, and may God bless these entire Cayman Islands.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.